Have you ever stopped to wonder if there are books so powerful, so terrifying in the wrong hands, that kings, priests, and empires conspired to erase them from the record of human history? Imagine a single parchment that could change the way millions understand the universe, or a few sentences capable of undermining the faith of entire civilizations. What would be so threatening, so unbearable, that it must be hidden, burned, or sealed away forever? Tonight, that is the mystery we will chase together. Before we go further, I want to invite you to do something simple. Take a breath. Settle into wherever you are, your bed, your chair, or maybe a quiet space with headphones on. Then, if you are ready for this journey into the forbidden, tap the like button. Tell me in the comments where in the world you are listening from, and subscribe to the channel. That way, when the shadows of history whisper again, you will be here to hear them. Ready? Then let us step into the darkness together. Picture yourself entering a vast hall that feels older than memory. The air is cool, almost damp, and carries the faint scent of parchment, smoke, and dust. Stone walls stretch upward, flickering with the glow of torches. Towering shelves rise on either side, lined with tomes bound in leather and scrolls tied with faded cords. Many carry titles in familiar languages, Greek, Latin, Arabic, but others are silent, their spines blank, their surfaces scarred as if resisting being read. Some are wrapped in chains, sealed with wax, or covered in warnings that dare you to open them. This is not just a library, it is a vault of human curiosity and fear. Now, imagine reaching out to one of these chained volumes. Your fingers hesitate. The chain is cold, almost alive, as though it knows you should not open it. But curiosity wins. You pry it open, and as the pages unfold, you see sketches of stars, diagrams of machines that should not exist, instructions written in languages no one alive can understand. At that moment, one question echoes in your mind. If knowledge has the power to free, does it not also have the power to destroy? Throughout history, cultures from Babylon to Egypt, from Greece to the heart of medieval Europe, have told stories of books too dangerous to survive. Some were said to contain magic, others secrets of the gods, and still others truths that threatened the authority of kings and priests. Many were burned in bonfires while crowds cheered. Others were locked away in monasteries, buried beneath temples, or quietly erased from memory by those who feared what would happen if ordinary people could read them. But here's the riddle. What if those books were not myths? What if fragments of them still exist, scattered across deserts, hidden in caves, resting under ruins? And if someone were to find one today, someone like you, would you dare to open it? Let me ask you this. If you held a manuscript that could give you knowledge beyond anyone alive, knowledge of the stars, of lost civilizations, of how to bend nature itself, would you read it, or would you burn it before it could burn you? That choice is not so distant as it may seem. Because as you will hear in the nights ahead, humans have always been both curious and afraid. We have always been drawn to secrets, even when we know they might undo us. Tonight, I invite you to imagine that you are not just a listener, but an explorer. Each page we turn together is a step deeper into the shadows where history and myth blur. Close your eyes now, if you like. Let your mind conjure the crackle of firelight on old pages, the hush of whispers in languages long forgotten, the pulse of your own heartbeat echoing through a silent chamber. Feel the pull of mystery. And remember, every legend about a lost or forbidden book begins with a single act. Someone, somewhere, was bold enough to read what should never have been read. So I ask you one last time, are you bold enough to follow me into that world tonight? Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine yourself traveling thousands of years into the past, to the very dawn of civilization. Before printing presses, before libraries, before the very idea of a book as we know it today, humans already understood that knowledge was both a gift and a weapon. They carved secrets into clay tablets, inked them on papyrus, etched them into stone, and guarded them with oaths of blood. These were not bedtime stories for children, but records of power, spells, astronomical charts, blueprints of forgotten machines, and codes of law whispered to have come directly from the gods. In Babylon, the cradle of so much of our civilization, there are whispers of the tablets of destiny. These legendary artifacts were said to contain the fate of the world itself, inscribed in divine script. Whoever possessed the tablets could control not just empires, but time and destiny itself. Priests guarded them, kings lusted after them, and wars were fought for the right to hold them. Of course, historians debate whether they truly existed, but the fact that the myths survived for millennia suggests something was once hidden, something too powerful for ordinary eyes. Travel now to ancient Egypt, where papyrus scrolls were filled with rituals to guide souls into the afterlife. One text, known as the Book of Thoth, was rumored to give its reader the power to command the earth, sea, and sky, to speak the language of animals, and even to summon the gods themselves. The story goes that any who tried to read it without permission from the gods were doomed to madness or death. It was said to have been hidden deep within the Nile, sealed in coffins, guarded by serpents and traps. Some pharaohs supposedly searched for it. Others feared it so much that they ordered it buried forever. If you had stumbled upon such a scroll in the shifting sands, would you have opened it, or fled in terror? And then, in the shadow of Mesopotamia and Egypt, the people of Sumer spoke of the Me. Divine decrees said to embody every art, every craft, every law of human society. Imagine a cosmic instruction manual, granting the secrets of kingship, warfare, music, and even love. According to legend, the goddess Inanna once stole the Me from the god Enki, bringing them to her city of Uruk. If these decrees were more than myth, then somewhere in our distant past, humanity might have once held a set of instructions for civilization itself, a book not written by humans but for humans. Legends like these are not accidents. Every civilization tells stories of knowledge that was hidden, stolen, or forbidden. Why? Perhaps because humans instinctively know that information can be dangerous. Knowledge, after all, is power, and power in the wrong hands can topple empires. Let me ask you something. Imagine you are a scribe in ancient Egypt. You are entrusted with a scroll that contains instructions for summoning the dead. The pharaoh commands you to lock it away, to never let another soul see it. But late one night, with only the flicker of an oil lamp, you find yourself tempted. Do you peek? Do you risk unleashing something you cannot control? Or do you obey and carry the secret to your grave? Stories like these carried warnings for generations. They were not just myths, but lessons about restraint, temptation, and the cost of curiosity. People feared that the written word could call down divine wrath or unravel the fragile balance of society. And so, some books were not destroyed, but hidden. Hidden so deeply that only whispers of them remain. Whispers we still hear today. It makes you wonder, does not it, if so many cultures across time and space speak of forbidden texts, perhaps there really were manuscripts capable of changing the course of history. Perhaps some still exist, waiting for the right or wrong person to find them. As we continue, keep that image in mind: shelves of clay tablets, scrolls buried in the sand, decrees stolen from the gods. The earliest legends of forbidden books remind us that the hunger for knowledge is as old as humanity itself, and so too is the fear of what that knowledge might unleash. So, if you were standing at the dawn of civilization, and the gods offered you a book with the power to rule the world, would you take it, or would you refuse, knowing that some knowledge is simply too heavy to bear? Imagine for a moment standing on the shores of ancient Egypt, where the Mediterranean sun paints the waves gold, and the air is thick with the scent of papyrus and spices carried from faraway lands. In the bustling city of Alexandria, founded by Alexander the Great, a dream once lived, a dream carved not from stone but from ink and knowledge. That dream was the great Library of Alexandria, a place that has haunted the imagination of scholars for centuries. The library was said to house hundreds of thousands of scrolls. Some estimates claim up to 500,000, collected from every corner of the known world. Ships arriving in the port were searched, their manuscripts confiscated, copied, and preserved. It was not only a library. It was an attempt to gather the sum of human knowledge into one place. Astronomy, medicine, philosophy, mathematics, histories of forgotten peoples, all of it stacked on wooden shelves, waiting to be read. If ever there was a place where forbidden knowledge could have been hidden, it was here. Think of it. A collection that might have included works from Aristotle's lost dialogues, accounts of vanished civilizations, and scientific theories that could have propelled humanity forward by centuries. Imagine blueprints for machines, maps of lands uncharted, records of healing herbs now extinct, or accounts of stars that modern telescopes would not rediscover until millennia later. What would the world look like if we had inherited those scrolls instead of losing them? The tragedy of Alexandria is that we will never truly know. For centuries, historians have debated what exactly happened to the library. Some say it was destroyed when Julius Caesar set fire to ships in the harbor, and the flames leapt into the city, consuming shelves of scrolls in a single night. Others argue it was attacked again and again, by Romans, by Christian zealots, by later conquerors, until nothing remained but ashes. Still others whisper that not all was lost, that some scrolls were smuggled away, hidden in private collections or buried beneath the sands. Picture yourself as a young scholar, standing in those corridors of papyrus. The walls echo with the crackle of fire, the scent of burning ink thick in your lungs. Scrolls crumble in your hands like autumn leaves. Around you, people flee with armfuls of manuscripts, desperate to save something, anything, before it is too late. You try to choose astronomy, medicine, philosophy, but the flames are faster than your hands. Which scroll would you save if you had the chance to rescue only one? The haunting thing is this: we may never know what was lost. Among the vanished works could have been cures for diseases that plagued humanity for centuries, insights into energy and mechanics that might have given us electricity or flight long before the modern age, or even records of civilizations that time has completely erased. The library is less a ruin than a ghost, an eternal reminder that knowledge, once gone, is almost impossible to recover. And yet, the Library of Alexandria is not just a story of loss. It is also a story of human ambition. Imagine the audacity of a civilization that sought to gather all wisdom into one place. Imagine the energy of scholars debating by lamplight, translators working through the night, mathematicians charting the heavens with tools of bronze and ink. For every scroll lost, there was once a hand that wrote it, a mind that dreamed it. That spirit, perhaps, is the real treasure of Alexandria, the reminder that humans are driven to seek, to preserve, to understand. But let us indulge in a thought experiment. What if the library had survived? Picture a timeline where its scrolls were copied and passed on through generations. Perhaps by the Middle Ages, humans might have already harnessed electricity, mapped the globe, or even reached for the stars. Empires might have risen and fallen differently. Wars might have been avoided, or new ones begun with weapons far ahead of their time. Would the world today be a utopia of wisdom, or a battlefield of unchecked power? And here's the playful twist. Imagine some Alexandrian scholar writing about flying machines, and a bored apprentice doodling wings in the margin, yawning, never realizing that one day people would cross oceans in metal birds. Imagine recipes for medicines scribbled in a script so tight that the ink smudged, lost to time, while humanity suffered centuries of plagues. If those scrolls survived, maybe your great-great-grandparents would not have struggled against illnesses we now cure in a single pill. So, what is the Library of Alexandria to us today? It is both a cautionary tale and a beacon. A tale of how fragile human memory is, how quickly fire can devour centuries of effort. And a beacon, reminding us of the importance of preserving knowledge now, in our digital age. Will the archives of today survive for millennia? Or will future generations look back at us with the same sorrow, wondering what secrets were lost to corruption, neglect, or silence? As you lie here, listening in the quiet, imagine walking among those shelves one last time. Torches flicker, shadows dance across papyrus, and every scroll seems to whisper, "Read me before I am gone." And ask yourself, if you had been there when the flames rose, would you have risked your life to save a single scroll? What if I told you that some of the earliest stories of lost civilizations all circle back to one thing? Books, tablets, or records said to have been written not by human hands, but by the gods themselves. Imagine texts so extraordinary that entire cultures believed they came from beings far beyond us. These were not just stories passed around a fire. They were blueprints for how humanity was meant to live, rule, and even transcend mortality. Let us begin with Atlantis, the fabled island described by Plato. According to legend, the Atlanteans possessed a library of crystal tablets, etched with knowledge of energy, astronomy, and technologies we still cannot replicate. Some versions of the story suggest these tablets survived the cataclysm, hidden deep beneath the ocean, or scattered among temples in Egypt and Central America. If such records exist, they might reveal how a civilization could flourish with technologies that modern science still struggles to imagine. Could it be that echoes of these texts linger in myths of flying machines, eternal power sources, or cities lit without fire? In Egypt again, we hear whispers of books tied to gods. Priests spoke of the Book of the Heavenly Cow, describing how humanity angered the sun god Ra, and how divine intervention nearly ended human history. But darker still was the rumored Emerald Tablets of Thoth. These green stone slabs supposedly held the secrets of the universe, the laws of reality, the methods of reincarnation, the mysteries of the soul. Some believe they were hidden beneath the Great Pyramid, guarded by traps and curses. Medieval alchemists later claimed fragments of the Emerald Tablets gave them knowledge to turn lead into gold and even glimpse immortality. If you could hold such a tablet, would you read it, knowing it might change not only your fate, but the fate of the entire world? Sumerian myths speak of the Anunnaki, powerful beings sometimes seen as gods, sometimes as visitors from the stars. According to cuneiform tablets discovered in Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki taught humanity agriculture, astronomy, and kingship. Some fringe theories even claim that they left behind a tablet of destinies, an artifact able to control the very order of the cosmos. While mainstream historians see these as symbolic myths, one cannot help but wonder, were they symbols or faint memories of something real? Now, let us travel across the ocean to the temples of the Maya and the Aztec. The Mayan Popol Vuh, often called their Book of Creation, speaks of gods experimenting with different versions of humanity. First men of mud, then men of wood, and finally men of maize. Some accounts hint at lost codices burned by Spanish conquerors, documents said to contain astronomical cycles so precise they rival modern calculations. Imagine how much deeper our understanding of time and the cosmos might be if those books still existed. The Aztecs, too, spoke of sacred manuscripts containing rituals so powerful they could summon gods of war and rain. Most were destroyed in bonfires by missionaries who feared their power. But perhaps the most haunting idea is this: what if all these cultures, Sumerians, Egyptians, Atlanteans, Mayans, were touching fragments of the same story? Each believed they had books from the gods. Each spoke of knowledge too great for humans to wield. What if they all remembered, in broken whispers, an original source, a text lost to us but echoing across civilizations like a forgotten song? And here's a thought experiment for you. Suppose tomorrow morning, divers in the Atlantic stumbled upon a vault, inside of which lay crystalline tablets glowing faintly in the dark. They bring them to the surface, and suddenly, humanity has proof of a lost civilization with knowledge beyond anything in our libraries. Do governments hide it? Do scientists unlock it? Do ordinary people panic or rejoice? And if you had a chance to read such a tablet, even knowing it could change the world overnight, would you? Sometimes I like to imagine these books not as dusty relics, but as living things, like seeds scattered across the earth, waiting for the right soil and the right season to bloom. Perhaps they lie beneath oceans, within pyramids, or in caves too dangerous to explore. Perhaps even now someone holds one, reading its words by candlelight, torn between sharing it with the world or keeping it locked away. The stories of books from the gods remind us of two things. First, that humanity has always longed for wisdom greater than itself, and second, that we have always feared the consequences of receiving it. Whether the Emerald Tablets, the Atlantean crystals, or the Popol Vuh's missing pages truly exist may never be proven. But the fact that so many cultures imagined them tells us something profound. Deep down, we believe there is knowledge that could change everything. And so I ask you, if one of these divine books were placed in your hands tonight, glowing with secrets of the universe, would you open it without hesitation, or would you close your eyes, fearing that some knowledge can never be returned once read? Faith has always been built upon words, hymns whispered in temples, commandments carved in stone, revelations written in sacred texts. But what happens when other books appear? Books that claim to reveal different truths. Books so dangerous to the guardians of faith that they are locked away, denounced as heresy, or burned in fire. Tonight, we will step into the shadowy world of hidden gospels, forbidden scriptures, and writings that might have changed religion forever. Let us begin with the Gnostic texts. For centuries, Christianity was thought to be built only on the 4 canonical Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But in 1945, in the Egyptian desert near Nag Hammadi, jars were unearthed containing over a dozen alternative Gospels. Among them was the Gospel of Thomas, a collection of sayings attributed to Jesus, many of which never appear in the Bible. Unlike the familiar stories of miracles, these words focus on inner wisdom. The kingdom of God is within you. Imagine how Christianity might have evolved if such teachings had been embraced instead of suppressed. Would faith have become more individual, more mystical, less bound to institutions? Another text, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, paints a radically different picture of one of the most controversial figures in the New Testament. In this account, Mary is not simply a follower, but a spiritual leader, trusted by Jesus more than his male disciples. Her words describe visions of the soul's ascent beyond material reality, hinting at a faith rooted in personal experience rather than rigid doctrine. If this gospel had survived intact, perhaps Mary Magdalene would have been remembered not as a sinner, but as the first teacher of a new path. Then there is the Book of Enoch, once cherished by early Jewish and Christian communities, but later declared heretical. This ancient text tells of angels who fell from heaven, intermingled with humans, and taught forbidden knowledge, warfare, cosmetics, sorcery. It even describes visions of the heavens, cosmic journeys that sound uncannily like science fiction. Though banned from the Bible, fragments survived in Ethiopia, shaping beliefs about demons, giants, and the end of days. Imagine if the Book of Enoch had remained in the canon. Our understanding of angels and evil might be entirely different today. And it is not only Christianity. Across religions, we find texts suppressed for threatening the established order. In Hinduism, there are rumored tantric scrolls that speak of using energy and consciousness to alter reality, too controversial for orthodox schools. In Islam, the Satanic Verses episode describes verses allegedly spoken by the Prophet Muhammad, later retracted as false. Whether legend or not, it shows how the very words of revelation can become contested ground. In Buddhism, certain esoteric sutras were hidden away in caves, revealed only to monks deemed worthy of handling their mysteries. Why would so many traditions censor or conceal texts? Perhaps because religion is not only faith but also power. A single book that suggests salvation lies within you, not in the temple or priest, can unravel centuries of hierarchy. A gospel that grants authority to a woman instead of men threatens entire systems of control. A scroll that whispers of forbidden magic or secret practices can fracture a community's shared reality. Now, imagine yourself as a believer in the ancient world. You hear rumors of a hidden book, one that offers a different path to the divine. Do you search for it, risking punishment and exile? Do you cling to the scriptures approved by your priests, trusting their wisdom? Or do you wonder late at night if truth might be larger than any one book? There is a strange comfort in the idea that countless words were lost, yet their shadows still influence us. Even if we never read the Gospel of Mary in full, the thought of it makes us question the stories we were taught. Even if the Book of Enoch was banned, fragments stir our imagination about angels and stars. These forbidden books act like mirrors in the dark. They reflect not just alternative beliefs, but the fears of those who sought to suppress them. And here is a playful thought. If tomorrow archaeologists discovered a new gospel sealed in a cave claiming to be written by one of Jesus' closest companions, what would happen? Would churches embrace it as a missing puzzle piece, or denounce it as a forgery? Would faith fracture or grow richer with diversity? And if that book ended up in your hands, would you read it secretly or share it with the world? The story of forbidden religious books reminds us that belief has never been simple. Faith is not only about gods and rituals, it is about which stories are told and which are silenced. And perhaps the greatest question of all is this: if the truth lies in a book hidden from us, how would we ever know? Knowledge is fragile. It does not take much to erase it, just a spark, a flame, or the fear of an authority threatened by new ideas. Tonight, let us step into the tragic history of scientific manuscripts that were not lost by accident, but deliberately burned, suppressed, or destroyed. These were works that might have changed the course of human history centuries earlier, had they survived. In ancient Greece, the mathematician Hypatia of Alexandria stands as one of the brightest minds silenced by ignorance. She was renowned for her work in astronomy and mathematics, teaching ideas that challenged the rigid dogmas of her time. Yet in 415 AD, a mob, fueled by religious zeal and political tension, murdered her and burned many of her writings. Imagine the scrolls she left behind, calculations of celestial movements, commentaries on geometry, perhaps even insights into machines we rediscovered only centuries later. A few sparks of knowledge endured, but the greater fire consumed the rest. The story repeats itself across ages. In China, during the Qin dynasty, Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered the infamous burning of books and burying of scholars around 213 BC. Thousands of texts on philosophy, medicine, and history were destroyed to consolidate the emperor's control. Only works of agriculture, medicine, and divination were spared. Think of it, entire schools of thought erased overnight. How many cures, how many philosophies that might have guided us differently, vanished in smoke. In medieval Europe, the Church carefully decided which ideas could be published, and which must be silenced. Galileo Galilei, who dared to write that the earth moved around the sun, saw his works banned and himself placed under house arrest. He was forced to recant, yet copies of his manuscripts still spread in secret. Others were not so lucky. Dozens of treatises on anatomy, chemistry, and natural philosophy were burned as heresy. Imagine if they had survived openly. Would antibiotics or vaccines have been discovered centuries earlier? Consider the lost works of ancient inventors. Heron of Alexandria described steam-powered devices in the 1st century, but much of his work was ignored or lost. Others whispered of designs for flying machines sketched by unknown hands, only to be suppressed for fear of their implications. Even Leonardo da Vinci, centuries later, filled notebooks with mechanical wonders, helicopters, tanks, submarines, that disappeared into private collections after his death. Some resurfaced, but what if entire volumes still lie hidden or destroyed? Now picture this. You are a young scholar in the Middle Ages. You have copied a manuscript from an old text, one that describes a strange mixture of herbs that seems to cure infections. Suddenly, word spreads. Authorities accuse you of witchcraft. They seize your papers, pile them in the square, and set them alight. You stand helpless as smoke curls upward, taking with it the possibility of saving lives. How many times did such a scene repeat, erasing discoveries before they could be shared? The suppression of science is not always fire and mobs. Sometimes it is silence. Ideas banned from universities, hidden in monasteries, or buried in archives where no one can read them. Knowledge delayed can be just as damaging as knowledge destroyed. If humanity had embraced heliocentrism earlier or preserved medical manuscripts instead of burning them, perhaps the Renaissance would have come sooner, or the Industrial Revolution centuries earlier. And here's a thought experiment. What if we could travel back and rescue just one lost manuscript? Would you choose a book of medicine to save lives across centuries, a work of astronomy to expand humanity's vision of the cosmos, or perhaps an engineering treatise to give flight or electricity to the ancient world? Which path of history would you alter, knowing that the world you know might vanish in exchange? It is almost funny, in a tragic way, to think of how fragile our progress has been. Centuries of genius could be undone in an afternoon by fire or decree. And yet, even in the ashes, whispers survived. The ideas of Galileo spread in secret. The legends of Hypatia inspired generations long after her death. Not all knowledge can be burned. Some of it finds ways to hide in the hearts of those who remember. As you listen now, let yourself imagine the lost manuscripts glowing faintly in the dark, like stars hidden behind smoke. Each one was a possibility, an invention, a cure, a revelation that humanity might never know. And ask yourself, if knowledge could have spared your ancestors centuries of suffering, is it not one of the greatest tragedies of history that so much was lost to flames? The Middle Ages were a time of castles and cathedrals, knights and kings, but also of shadows, superstition, fear, and the relentless hunt for knowledge deemed too dangerous. In this world, a book was never just ink on parchment. It could be a sacred treasure, or a death sentence. Tonight, we turn to the mysterious books of magic, the grimoires, that terrified medieval Europe. A grimoire was more than a collection of spells. To believers, it was a roadmap to hidden powers, summoning angels or demons, crafting charms, bending nature itself. These books carried titles that still chill the imagination: the Grand Grimoire, the Key of Solomon, the Book of Abramelin. Some claimed to contain rituals so exact that one mistake could cost your soul. Others promised wealth, love, or visions of the future. To the church, they were not quaint hobbies, they were threats to the order of heaven and earth. The Key of Solomon, for instance, claimed to reveal secrets of astrology, angelic hierarchies, and incantations said to control spirits. Scholars debate whether it was truly ancient or a medieval creation, disguised as something older. Either way, the book circulated in whispers, copied by hand, passed from alchemist to apprentice. Imagine the thrill of holding such a text in candlelight, flipping through diagrams of pentacles, hearing your heart pound as though the page itself might be alive. The Grand Grimoire, also called the Red Dragon, was even more infamous. It allegedly contained instructions for summoning Lucifer himself and making a pact. Of course, we might chuckle today, imagining a medieval farmer stumbling over Latin and accidentally summoning something he could not banish. Kind of like ordering fast food in a language you do not understand and ending up with a demon instead of dinner. But in its time, people believed. Belief was enough to terrify villages, enough to condemn a man or woman to death for merely owning a suspicious-looking book. Fear of grimoires fed the fires of the Inquisition. Ordinary people, desperate in times of plague or famine, might turn to a charm for protection. A mother could scribble a few words on parchment, tie it around her child's neck, and hope it would keep disease away. But if authorities discovered it, she could be accused of witchcraft. Entire libraries were seized, scrolls confiscated, and sorcerers put on trial. Ironically, many grimoires were nothing more than lists of prayers, folk remedies, or astrological charts. Yet once labeled magic, they became evidence of dealings with the devil. Still, not all magic was demonized. Some grimoires found their way into the hands of royalty. Kings and nobles sometimes employed astrologers and magicians, secretly consulting books they publicly condemned. Imagine a king in full regalia, denouncing sorcery by day, but sneaking into his chamber at night to ask his court wizard, "So, what do the stars say about my chances in tomorrow's battle?" Hypocrisy, it seems, is as old as power. And let us not forget the Book of Abramelin, a mystical text said to teach its reader how to summon a guardian angel who would reveal divine secrets. It required months of ritual purification, fasting, and prayer. Failure could mean madness, but the promise, direct communion with the divine, was irresistible. Even centuries later, occultists like Aleister Crowley claimed to pursue its secrets. Whether genuine or imagined, the Abramelin rituals show how the line between magic and faith was often razor thin. But why were these books feared so deeply? Partly because knowledge meant independence. If peasants could read charms to heal, why rely on priests? If nobles could consult stars for guidance, why trust sermons? Books of magic threatened not just souls but structures of control. And so they were banned, hunted, and burned. Yet as history shows, the more forbidden a thing becomes, the more alluring it grows. Here's a question for you. If you lived in a medieval village and someone offered you a book that claimed to keep your crops safe, heal your child, or let you glimpse the future, would you take it, even if discovery meant death? Or would you turn away, clutching your faith and hoping the plague would pass your door? The irony, of course, is that many so-called grimoires were just misunderstood texts, manuals of herbal medicine, astronomy, or symbolic drawings. To the fearful eye, a diagram of planetary movements looked like a summoning circle. A list of herbs looked like a potion recipe. How many innocent lives were lost because curiosity looked too much like heresy? Yet even amid fear, some of these books survived. Hidden in monasteries, buried in chests, passed in secret, they endured. And their survival reminds us of something powerful, that even when knowledge is persecuted, someone always risks everything to preserve it. So tonight, as you listen, imagine yourself sitting in a candlelit room, an old grimoire open on the table. Its pages smell of dust and ink. Symbols glimmer faintly, like eyes watching you from the parchment. Do you close the book and hide it away, or do you lean closer, whispering the words that might bring more than you bargained for? There is perhaps no book in history more infamous, more shrouded in whispers and superstition than the Codex Gigas. Its name means the giant book, but most know it by its darker title, the Devil's Bible. At nearly 3 feet tall, weighing over 160 pounds, bound in leather, it is the largest medieval manuscript still in existence. To stand before it is to feel small, as though the book itself is less a human creation and more a relic from another world. Legend says the Codex Gigas was written in a single night by a monk who made a pact with the devil. Condemned to death for breaking his vows, the monk pleaded for mercy and promised to create a book that would glorify the monastery forever. When midnight came and his task seemed impossible, he turned to the only being who could help him, Lucifer. In exchange for his soul, the devil agreed, and the next morning the colossal manuscript was complete, with a chilling full-page portrait of the devil himself grinning from within. Of course, historians tell us that a single scribe probably wrote it over many years, carefully copying biblical texts, medical treatises, and histories. But the legend endures, because when you look into that strange, oversized devil illustration, it feels like more than ink on vellum. It feels like a dare, a reminder that every page carries both knowledge and danger. The Codex Gigas contains the entire Latin Bible, along with texts on exorcism, astronomy, medicine, even a chronicle of the world. In the medieval mind, this made it more than a book. It was a library bound into a single volume. Imagine a monk in candlelight flipping through its pages, one moment studying scripture, the next glancing at herbal remedies, then suddenly staring into the painted face of Satan. No wonder people believed it carried a curse. Throughout history, strange stories followed the book. When it was taken as war booty to Sweden in the 17th century, a great fire broke out in the royal library. Witnesses claimed that when the codex was thrown from a window to save it, the flames mysteriously stopped advancing, as though the book itself demanded to survive. Today it rests in the National Library of Sweden, still drawing visitors who gaze at it in awe and unease. But perhaps the most fascinating part is not the book's size or its legends, but what it represents. A single text that brings together Holy Scripture and forbidden lore side by side. A Bible that contains exorcisms. A chronicle that stares back at you with the devil's eyes. The Codex is a paradox bound in leather. Is it sacred or profane, salvation or damnation? Or perhaps it reminds us that knowledge itself has always lived in the tension between light and darkness. Now, imagine yourself turning those massive pages. The parchment crackles under your hand. The ink seems almost alive. You pause at the devil's portrait, a horned figure squatting, claws sharp, eyes wide, mouth twisted in a grin that feels both mocking and inviting. Do you close the book quickly, crossing yourself in fear, or do you lean closer, wondering what secret such a grin conceals? Here is a playful thought. What if the devil in the portrait was not meant to scare but to warn? Perhaps the scribe, whether saint or sinner, left a reminder. Knowledge, once gained, cannot be undone. It can save, or it can destroy. And sometimes, the only thing separating the two is the heart of the reader. It is easy for us, centuries later, to smile at the superstition. We know the Codex Gigas was written by human hands. We know no single night of writing could produce such a masterpiece. And yet, there is still something uncanny about it. Its size is unnatural. Its survival is miraculous. Its reputation endures not because of demons, but because deep down we recognize the truth of the legend, that knowledge always comes with a price. So tonight, as you listen, ask yourself, if the Devil's Bible were placed before you, heavy as stone, whispering with its oversized pages, would you dare to read it cover to cover, or would you shut it forever, afraid that even reading might feel like a pact of its own? Throughout history, humans have longed to glimpse what lies ahead. Some stared at the stars, others cast bones or shuffled cards. But the most haunting attempts to pierce the veil of time have come in the form of books, books of prophecy. These were not simply fortune-tellers' scribbles, but texts that claimed to map the future of nations, empires, and the entire world. Perhaps the most famous is the Prophecies of Nostradamus, published in 1555. Written in cryptic quatrains, these verses have been interpreted as foretelling everything from the rise of Napoleon to the world wars, even modern disasters. The strange thing about Nostradamus's writing is how vague and yet how compelling it feels. A single verse could seem meaningless until a tragedy strikes, and suddenly it looks like he predicted it centuries earlier. Did Nostradamus truly glimpse the future, or was he simply skilled at writing riddles that could always find a fit? Yet Nostradamus was not alone. Medieval Europe was filled with prophetic texts, the Sibylline oracles, the prophecies of Saint Malachi, who allegedly listed every pope until the world's end. Some of these lists eerily matched history. Others were obvious forgeries. But the pattern was the same. People wanted a book to tell them what came next. In times of plague, famine, or war, prophecy offered not just fear, but hope, the belief that suffering had meaning and that salvation was coming. In the Islamic world, texts like the Hadith al-Fitan spoke of apocalyptic battles and the rise of a Mahdi. In India, certain Puranas described cycles of ages, predicting a future avatar who will restore balance. In Mesoamerica, the Maya codices tracked the stars and foretold great cycles of time, leading some to believe 2012 would mark the end of the world. Over and over, civilizations turned to books to decode the riddle of tomorrow. But what if these prophecies were not just symbolic? Imagine stumbling upon a manuscript hidden for centuries, one that lays out events with unsettling clarity, wars yet to come, discoveries not yet made, disasters poised to unfold. What would happen if it were read aloud today? Would governments suppress it, fearing panic? Would billionaires try to buy it to secure their survival? Would ordinary people cling to it or dismiss it as nonsense? And here's the twist. Even if such a book existed, would it truly help us? Knowing the future does not mean controlling it. If a book told you that a storm would destroy your city next year, would you flee? Or would you stay, uncertain if by running you were fulfilling the prophecy? Prophecies can become cages, trapping us in fear of what might be, rather than freeing us to shape what will be. Still, there is an undeniable allure to these books. They whisper that time is not a mystery, but a script. They promise that chaos is not chaos at all, but order too vast for us to see. And in that promise lies comfort, the sense that someone, somewhere, has already read the last page of history. Let me ask you, if I handed you a prophetic book tonight, sealed for centuries, would you open it? What if the first page listed the day of your death? Would you want to know? Some people would snatch it eagerly, desperate for certainty. Others would slam it shut, terrified of losing the gift of not knowing. Which would you be? And here's the ironic joke. Even if such books exist, humanity has always been terrible at listening. Warnings are ignored, predictions misread. A prophecy might say, "Beware the fire in the east," and people will spend centuries debating whether it means volcanoes, war, or a kitchen accident. Maybe prophecy is not about certainty at all, but about the questions it forces us to ask. So tonight, as you drift deeper into this story, picture yourself holding a book that claims to hold the future. Its pages glow faintly, as though lit from within. The words twist and shimmer, never fully fixed, as though they are rewriting themselves as you read. Do you trust them, or do you smile, close the book, and decide that the future is still yours to write? Imagine for a moment being ill in the ancient world. A fever grips you, or a wound festers. There are no hospitals, no antibiotics, no modern surgeons. Instead, hope lies in the hands of healers, priests, and herbalists, men and women who relied on knowledge passed down in fragile scrolls and manuscripts. Many of those medical texts, once treasured, are now gone, burned, buried, or hidden away. And with them, perhaps, cures and insights that could have saved millions of lives across history. Take the lost works of Hippocrates, the father of medicine. We know fragments of his teachings, his oath, his belief that disease has natural rather than divine causes. But records suggest he wrote dozens of treatises, far beyond what survives. What remedies, what observations have vanished? Some historians speculate he documented surgical techniques, herbal formulas, even early forms of diagnosis that would not be rediscovered for centuries. In ancient China, medical manuscripts were destroyed during political upheavals, including the Qin dynasty's notorious book burnings. Among them may have been detailed descriptions of acupuncture, herbal remedies, and theories of chi energy that could have broadened modern understanding. We know that certain ancient remedies, once dismissed, have proven effective even today, like artemisinin, derived from a plant used in Chinese medicine, which won a Nobel Prize for its role in treating malaria. How many similar cures were lost in fire? India, too, speaks of missing texts. The Charaka Samhita and Sushruta Samhita, still studied today, are considered jewels of Ayurveda, but they are fragments of a once much larger body of knowledge. Legends tell of scrolls describing hundreds of surgical tools, techniques for cataract surgery, even methods for complex operations centuries before Europe dared to attempt them. Imagine how differently global medicine might have evolved if those complete works had survived intact. And then there is the mystery of the Library of Alexandria, once more. Among the scrolls said to have perished were treatises on anatomy, botany, and healing. Imagine if cures for smallpox, cholera, or the plague had been locked in those shelves, centuries before the diseases devastated humanity. Perhaps an herbal formula, or a description of microbes invisible to the naked eye, lay waiting, never to be read. Closer to our own time, the Middle Ages saw medical manuscripts condemned as heresy. Some blended science with astrology, others mixed Christian prayer with herbal recipes. The Church often viewed them with suspicion, fearful that healing without divine approval was dangerous. Entire collections of folk remedies, passed from village to village, were lost when labeled as witchcraft. How many ordinary women, wise healers in their towns, saw their notes destroyed in flames while patients died for lack of treatment? Now picture yourself as a patient in the 14th century. A plague sweeps your village. Priests pray, doctors bleed patients, but nothing works. Then a traveler whispers of a hidden book, a manuscript said to hold a cure. Would you risk everything to find it, or would you dismiss it as false hope, too afraid to believe salvation could lie in pages forbidden by authority? The irony is that modern science sometimes rediscovers what the ancients already knew. Willow bark, once chewed for pain, became aspirin. Mold, once dismissed as filth, became penicillin. Who can say what else was once written in neat, careful lines on parchment, only to vanish? And here's a thought experiment. Suppose tomorrow an archaeologist uncovers a sealed jar in a desert cave. Inside lies a papyrus describing a plant that cures cancer or halts aging. What happens then? Pharmaceutical companies would scramble. Governments might hide it. People would flood the deserts in search of more. Would this be a miracle or chaos? Lost medical books remind us of two truths. First, that knowledge is never guaranteed. Second, that the cost of its loss is often measured in lives. Every missing manuscript could represent centuries of unnecessary suffering. And every rediscovered scrap is a reminder that sometimes the future was already written in the past. So tonight, as you rest, imagine leafing through one of these lost medical codices. The handwriting is precise, the illustrations vivid, roots, herbs, and surgical tools carefully drawn. At the bottom of one page, you find a recipe for a cure unknown today. Would you reveal it to the world, or keep it hidden, fearing the consequences of knowledge too powerful to control? When we speak of lost books, secret manuscripts, and forbidden knowledge, one of the most mysterious groups always enters the conversation: the Knights Templar. On the surface, they were warrior monks, sworn to protect pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land during the Crusades. But beneath the white mantles marked with the Red Cross, rumors swirled of hidden treasures, strange rituals, and most tantalizing of all, a secret library said to contain knowledge that could shake the foundations of Christianity and the medieval world. The Templars were not ordinary knights. They were wealthy, powerful, and extraordinarily well-connected. They built castles, banks, and trade networks across Europe and the Middle East. But it was in Jerusalem, beneath the ruins of the Temple of Solomon, where their legend truly began. Chroniclers tell us that when the first Templars established their headquarters on the Temple Mount, they spent years digging through its foundations. Officially, they were guarding the holy site. Unofficially, people whispered they were searching for relics, and they found them. What did they uncover? Some claimed they discovered the Holy Grail, the cup of Christ. Others spoke of the Ark of the Covenant, the chest said to hold the 10 Commandments. But another theory, perhaps the most chilling, is that they found books. Scrolls, parchments, ancient manuscripts hidden away during the destruction of the temple centuries earlier. If true, these texts might have included lost Gospels, Jewish mystical writings, or even records of knowledge passed down from civilizations older than Israel itself. Imagine the impact of such discoveries in medieval Europe. If the Templars held proof that church dogma was incomplete or worse, deliberately false, their power would extend beyond swords and coins. It would reach into the soul of Christendom. Is it any wonder that kings and popes began to fear them? By the early 1300s, the Templars had grown too rich, too independent. King Philip IV of France, drowning in debt to them, decided to strike. On Friday, October 13, 1307, he ordered the mass arrest of Templars across France. They were charged with heresy, devil worship, and secret rituals. Under torture, some confessed to spitting on the cross, to denying Christ, to worshipping a mysterious head known as Baphomet. But among the accusations lurked a quieter, more dangerous suspicion, that they possessed hidden writings, a secret library locked away from the world. Where is it now? Some say the Templars spirited their treasures to Scotland, hiding them beneath Rosslyn Chapel, whose cryptic carvings still stir speculation. Others claim the manuscripts were carried across the sea, becoming part of the legends of Oak Island in Nova Scotia. Still others insist that the Vatican itself holds the documents in its secret archives, guarded from public view to this very day. Picture yourself as a Templar, the night before your arrest. You stand in a stone chamber lit by torches. In front of you are wooden chests filled with scrolls and codices. They are fragile, priceless, and dangerous. Soldiers are coming. You have minutes to decide. Do you bury them in the earth? Do you trust them to a brother to carry across the sea? Or do you burn them, ensuring that no enemy, not even the church, can use them? The fascination with the Templars' library is not only about relics. It is about the possibility that knowledge exists outside the narratives we have inherited. If the Templars had manuscripts proving that Jesus lived differently than told, or that ancient civilizations possessed forgotten sciences, then history as we know it would be incomplete, a puzzle missing its most crucial pieces. And here's the playful twist. Imagine a group of armored monks poring over scrolls about astronomy, medicine, or geometry, sipping wine and arguing like modern scientists. Perhaps the Templars were not devil worshippers at all, but simply scholars who read too much and in reading stumbled into truths that frightened their world. Centuries later, their legend still captivates us. Every time someone whispers of the Holy Grail, the Ark, or a map to hidden treasure, the shadow of the Templars looms. Their story reminds us that libraries can be as dangerous as swords, and sometimes even more powerful. So tonight, as you let your mind wander, ask yourself, if you discovered the lost library of the Templars, hidden in a vault beneath stone and dust, would you dare to open those chests? What if the first scroll you unrolled contradicted everything you had been taught to believe? Would you embrace the truth or close the lid, letting the secret sleep for another 1,000 years? If you could hold in your hands a book that promised to unlock the greatest secret of wealth, transforming worthless lead into glittering gold, would you read it? Would you risk everything for a chance at riches, power, and eternal fame? This was the dream of the alchemists, and for centuries, their secret books were among the most sought-after and most feared manuscripts in the world. Alchemy was never just about metal. At its heart, it was a philosophy, a vision of transforming not only matter but also the soul. The alchemist's furnace was both laboratory and altar, where fire tested not just lead but human spirit. But to medieval kings and curious scholars alike, what mattered most was the promise of the philosopher's stone, the legendary substance said to turn base metals into gold, and perhaps even grant immortality. Books of alchemy circulated across Europe, often wrapped in riddles, symbols, and obscure metaphors. Some were practical guides, filled with recipes for tinctures and distillations. Others were mystical, describing inner purification through cryptic imagery. Titles like the Emerald Tablet, the Mutu's Liber, and the Book of the Holy Trinity filled libraries and secret chambers. Yet the more mysterious they seemed, the more they were hunted, by monarchs desperate for wealth, by priests fearful of heresy, and by ordinary people hoping for miracles. The Emerald Tablet, for example, was said to contain a single inscription, as above, so below. Just 4 words, yet they inspired entire generations of alchemists. The phrase suggested that the microcosm of human life reflected the macrocosm of the universe, that by mastering the small, one could master the great. For the faithful, it hinted at cosmic unity. For the ambitious, it whispered of ultimate power. Of course, most experiments ended in disappointment. Imagine a medieval scholar hunched over bubbling flasks, chanting incantations, only to end up with a pile of foul-smelling sludge instead of shining gold. You can almost picture his wife standing in the doorway, arms crossed, sighing, "So, did you finally make gold this time, or just stink up the house again?" Even failure, however, did not stop them. For each failed recipe, another secret book promised success, if only one could decode its riddles. But here is where the story darkens, because alchemy was not always laughed at. Sometimes it was punished. Monarchs feared counterfeiters. The church feared heretics. Some alchemists were imprisoned, tortured, or burned alive for the knowledge they pursued. Others hid their manuscripts in coded symbols, drawings of dragons, suns, and moons, so that only the initiated could understand them. These books became both shields and lures. To the ignorant, meaningless pictures. To the wise, maps of transformation. And yet, hidden in these texts was real science. Distillation, crystallization, metallurgy, all were advanced by alchemists chasing gold. Without their strange experiments, modern chemistry and pharmacy might never have been born. Their books were bridges between magic and science, mysticism and laboratory work. Perhaps the dream of gold was just the bait, while the real treasure was knowledge itself. Now imagine you find such a book in a dusty attic. Its leather cover cracks as you open it. Symbols of suns, serpents, and circles stare back at you. One page seems to describe a recipe: mercury, sulfur, salt. Proportions unclear. The next page is a drawing of a man dissolving into light. Do you laugh and close it, or do you wonder, just for a moment, if perhaps the old dream of transmutation was not so impossible after all? Here's a thought experiment. What if an alchemist had succeeded? What if somewhere in history someone cracked the code, and their book contained the real method to create gold? Would we even know? Or would that knowledge have been hidden instantly, locked away to prevent economic collapse? After all, if everyone could make gold, it would cease to be precious. The secret would be too powerful to share. The lost books of alchemy remind us of something crucial. Humanity's hunger is not just for wealth, but for transformation. The lead into gold was always more than literal. It was about turning ignorance into wisdom, fear into courage, mortality into eternity. And though we may not believe in the Philosopher's Stone today, the question remains: if you could find a book that promised to change not just what you own, but who you are, would you read it? When knowledge is too dangerous to destroy, but too powerful to share, where does it go? Often, it slips into the shadows, hidden by secret societies. Throughout history, whispered brotherhoods and clandestine orders have guarded manuscripts said to hold truths too disruptive for the world. Tonight, let us wander into that labyrinth, where books were not only read, but concealed, protected, and sometimes weaponized. The Freemasons are often accused of such guardianship. Formed in the Middle Ages and rising to influence in later centuries, the Masons surrounded themselves with symbols, compasses, pillars, eyes watching from pyramids. Some believe their lodges held more than rituals, that deep within their archives were manuscripts passed down from the Templars, containing mystical geometry, hidden histories, even lost Gospels. The Freemasons deny it, of course. But the suspicion lingers. What if those leather-bound volumes still sit locked in oak cabinets, waiting for a reader bold enough to peek inside? Then there are the Rosicrucians, a mysterious order that appeared in Europe in the 1600s. Their manifestos spoke of secret wisdom, universal reformation, and hidden knowledge of nature and spirit. Rumors claimed they possessed books on alchemy, astronomy, and medicine far ahead of their time. Some even whispered that they had a library, invisible to outsiders, a collection of works by sages and prophets throughout the ages. Whether myth or truth, the Rosicrucians became a symbol of forbidden knowledge, an invisible college of secrets. And let us not forget the Illuminati. Founded in Bavaria in 1776, they sought to challenge the church and monarchy with reason and enlightenment. But soon, conspiracy theories painted them as puppet masters of the world. Were they truly destroyed, or did they simply go underground, taking with them books too dangerous for the masses? Imagine a manuscript penned by the Illuminati, mapping out future revolutions, technological leaps, or political shifts. Would it be prophecy, or a blueprint for control? Not all secret societies were grand. Some were small, hidden brotherhoods of scholars who dared to copy forbidden manuscripts. In medieval Spain, Jewish and Muslim philosophers preserved Greek and Roman texts banned by the Inquisition. In Renaissance Italy, clandestine academies studied astrology, alchemy, and Hermetic philosophy in hidden rooms. For these groups, secrecy was survival. A book read in the wrong company could mean prison, torture, or death. Now picture this. You are initiated into a secret society. The room is lit by torches. Symbols are carved into the walls. A master places a heavy volume into your hands. Its pages smell of dust and ink. He whispers, "Guard this with your life." The world is not ready. What do you feel, honor, fear, or the weight of temptation to reveal what lies inside? Here's the irony. Sometimes the very act of hiding knowledge creates its power. A book in the open may be ignored. A book in chains becomes irresistible. The more secret the society, the more the imagination of outsiders grows. Perhaps some of these books were ordinary treatises, astronomy charts, herbal recipes, essays on politics. But once hidden, they gained an aura of danger, as though each page contained the spark to topple kingdoms. And here's the playful thought: what if one of these societies still exists, still meeting under candlelight, still opening a chest of forbidden texts each month, perhaps, while we scroll on our phones somewhere in an ancient hall, hands turn the fragile pages of a book that could rewrite our understanding of history, science, or faith? Would you want them to reveal it, or keep the secret, to protect us from truths we might not survive? The books hidden by secret societies remind us of humanity's paradox. We yearn for truth, yet we fear it. We long for light, yet we hide it in shadows. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest library of all is not destroyed, but waiting, guarded by silent watchers who believe they know when the world will finally be ready. So I leave you with this question. If a secret society invited you into their hidden archive, offering you the chance to read what few eyes have ever seen, would you accept, or would you turn away, knowing that once you open such a book, you can never go back to the world as it was? Every empire has feared the same enemy, not swords, not armies, but words. For what is more dangerous to a ruler than an idea written down, multiplied, and passed from hand to hand tonight? Let us explore the forbidden shelves of history, the books that empires tried to erase, the texts banned because they threatened to spark rebellion, question authority, or ignite the imagination of ordinary people. The Roman Empire, mighty as it was, knew the danger of words. When the philosopher Seneca wrote of virtue over wealth, when poets whispered of freedom, emperors grew uneasy. Works of philosophers like Epicurus, which encouraged simple living rather than loyalty to the state, were suppressed. And in the ashes of Rome's persecutions, early Christian texts were hunted and burned. To own a gospel in secret was to risk your life, yet believers hid them anyway, carrying fragments into caves and catacombs. Centuries later, the same pattern appeared in China. The Tang and Ming dynasties banned books deemed harmful to order, histories that criticized the emperor, essays on governance that strayed from orthodoxy. Sometimes entire libraries were destroyed. But just as often, readers found ways to preserve them, copying passages by hand, hiding scrolls in walls, even memorizing whole works, so that knowledge could live inside the mind if not on the page. Imagine being a scholar whose only library was your memory, reciting texts in the dark to keep them alive. The Ottoman Empire, too, policed the written word. Printing presses were long resisted, for fear that uncontrolled books might spread heresy or sedition. It was only in the 18th century that printing was officially allowed in Istanbul, centuries after Europe had embraced it. By then, countless works, scientific, philosophical, and literary, had been slowed or lost to censorship. How different might the Islamic Golden Age have been if free printing had flourished earlier. In Russia, under the Tsars and later the Soviets, censorship became an art form. Books that questioned the state, from poetry to philosophy, were banned. Possessing certain titles could mean exile to Siberia. Yet underground networks, known as samizdat, copied banned works by hand or typewriter, passing them secretly from reader to reader. Every copy was an act of rebellion, every page a whispered refusal to let truth die. Even in more recent times, empires and regimes feared books. The Nazis famously staged bonfires in 1933, burning works of Jewish, socialist, and degenerate authors. Flames lit the night sky as students tossed volumes into the fire, chanting oaths of loyalty. Yet the act revealed more fear than strength, fear that ideas could outlive armies. Ironically, many of those authors' works survived, hidden or smuggled, while the empire that tried to destroy them fell in ruins. Now imagine this: you live under such a regime. A friend slips you a small book banned by decree. It criticizes the emperor, or dares to dream of equality. If you are caught, you face prison or worse. Do you read it, knowing it could change your mind forever, or do you burn it yourself, trading truth for safety? Here is the irony of banned books. Often, the very attempt to silence them makes them louder. A book banned becomes a book desired. The forbidden text becomes the flame that refuses to die. And sometimes, the survival of a single copy, hidden in an attic, buried in a jar, memorized in the heart of one reader, is enough to keep an idea alive until the empire itself collapses. The lesson is clear: swords conquer land, but books conquer time. Empires rise and fall, yet banned books often outlast the banners of kings and dictators. Their pages remind us that truth cannot be fully chained, and imagination cannot be executed. So tonight, let yourself picture a shelf of banned books glowing in the dark. Titles the world was never meant to see. Words whispered from one generation to another, smuggled across borders, carried in secret hearts. And ask yourself, if one of those forbidden volumes were placed in your hands tonight, would you risk everything to read it, or would you close your eyes, leaving its fire untended? Not all lost books vanish in fire or war. Some sit in plain sight, but may as well be invisible, because no one can read them. These are the books written in codes so strange, so unbreakable, that even the greatest minds of our age remain baffled. They are libraries of secrets, locked behind alphabets no one can decipher. The most famous of them all is the Voynich manuscript. Bound in calfskin and filled with hundreds of pages of bizarre illustrations, it looks like something straight out of a dream or a nightmare. Its text is written in an unknown script, looping and curling in ways that suggest meaning, but none we can recognize. Its pages show plants that do not exist, stars in unfamiliar constellations, women bathing in pools of green liquid, strange pipes and tubes that look almost mechanical. For centuries, scholars, cryptographers, even codebreakers from World War I have tried to unlock its secrets. None succeeded. Some believe it is a hoax. Others, a forgotten language. Still others whisper, it is a book from another world. The Voynich is not alone. The Rohank Codex, discovered in Hungary, is filled with over 400 pages of unknown writing and illustrations of Christian, pagan, and military scenes. No one knows its author or its purpose. Then there is the Copiali cipher, a manuscript of 105 pages discovered in Germany, written in a code of strange symbols. For years it resisted decoding, until researchers finally cracked it, revealing it to be a text about rituals of a secret society from the 18th century. If one coded book was solved, might others also yield their secrets, if only we find the right key? But here's where the mystery deepens. Some coded books may not be meant for us at all. What if the Voynich was written as a memory aid for its author alone, its meaning clear only to a single mind, or worse? What if it was written for beings not human, its alphabet designed for an intelligence beyond ours? Imagine aliens landing centuries ago, leaving behind a manual for survival, wrapped in symbols our brains cannot process. What if the book sits on a library shelf today, quietly mocking us with every page we cannot read? Now picture this: you are given a book of unbreakable code. The letters swirl and shimmer as though alive. Do you spend your life trying to decode it, or do you close it, accepting that some knowledge is not meant for you? Would the mystery drive you mad or inspire you? There is a peculiar irony here. Sometimes the code itself becomes the treasure. The Voynich has fascinated so many, not because of what it says, but because it refuses to say it. Its silence creates its legend. In a way, the mystery is the message. By never revealing its meaning, it forces us to confront how much we do not know, and how much we hunger to know. But let us play with a thought. Suppose tomorrow morning a linguist deciphers the Voynich manuscript and the world learns the truth. Would it be a medical book of herbs and baths, a medieval prank, or something world-shattering, like instructions for technology we cannot yet grasp? Which outcome would disappoint you more? That it is too ordinary or that it is too extraordinary? The books written in unbreakable codes remind us that some secrets do not need flames to remain hidden. They hide in plain sight, taunting us, daring us to break their locks. And perhaps as you drift into sleep tonight, you too can imagine holding such a manuscript, the ink shifting under your gaze. Would you try to solve it, or would you simply listen to the whisper of the unknown? A whisper saying, some doors are not meant to open, yet. Throughout history, fire has been the weapon of choice against dangerous ideas. Empires, churches, and kings have all feared the same thing, that a book might outlive their rule. And so, when words threaten to ignite rebellion or spread heresy, they turn to flames. Tonight, let us walk through the smoke of centuries, where the ashes of burned books still whisper their stories. In the early days of Christianity, heretics were those who strayed from the Church's teachings. Gnostic Gospels, texts like the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Mary, were deemed dangerous because they presented Jesus in ways that challenged authority. Some depicted him as a teacher of secret wisdom. Others suggested Mary Magdalene held a role greater than the Church allowed. These writings were hunted down and burned, their followers silenced. For centuries, they were thought lost, until fragments resurfaced in the sands of Egypt at Nag Hammadi in 1945. But how many others, consumed by fire, are gone forever? The Middle Ages brought inquisitions. Books that questioned doctrine were seized and burned, often alongside their authors. In 1313, the works of Meister Eckhart, a German mystic who spoke of direct union with God, were threatened with destruction. In Spain, Jewish and Islamic texts faced the flames during the Inquisition, their libraries reduced to cinders. Imagine being a scholar who watched generations of accumulated wisdom vanish in a single night of fire. Then came the Reformation. Martin Luther's 95 Theses cracked the foundation of the Catholic Church, and suddenly books became weapons of war. Protestant and Catholic authorities alike burned each other's texts. To own the wrong Bible translation could mean death. William Tyndale, who translated the Bible into English, was strangled and burned in 1536. His crime, making Scripture accessible to ordinary people. His ashes may have scattered, but his words endured, shaping the English language and faith for centuries to come. In later centuries, political rebels faced the same fate. The writings of revolutionaries, pamphlets, manifestos, essays, were tossed into flames by fearful regimes. In 18th century France, works that criticized monarchy were banned and burned, yet still circulated in secret, fueling the French Revolution. In Russia, radical texts were hunted by the czars, their readers imprisoned in Siberia. But every book burned seemed only to feed the fire of resistance. And who can forget the Nazis? In May 1933, students gathered in Berlin and other German cities to throw books into great bonfires, works of Jewish authors, communist thinkers, modern artists, and scientists like Einstein and Freud. As flames rose, the crowds cheered. But outside the circle of firelight, others mourned. For every book consumed, the spirit of defiance grew stronger. Years later, as the Nazi Empire crumbled, the words they feared most survived, while their ideology burned out of history. Picture yourself at one of these fires. The crowd chants, the flames leap high, an official hands you a book and orders you to throw it in. The title is familiar. Perhaps it is a novel you love, or a text that once comforted you. Do you obey, saving yourself from suspicion, or do you clutch it tight, knowing that to resist is to risk everything? Here is the cruel irony. By burning books, authorities often made them immortal. A book banned or destroyed gains a legend. Its ashes glow in the imagination, and its absence becomes louder than its presence ever was. Tyndall's Bible, Nag Hammadi's Gospels, revolutionary pamphlets, all were targeted by fire, yet their ideas outlasted the flames. The burned books of heretics and rebels remind us that words are among the most resilient of creations. Paper burns, ink fades, but the idea, that dangerous, electrifying spark, leaps from one mind to another, impossible to extinguish. So as you drift into sleep tonight, imagine holding a book singed at the edges, pages half burned but still legible. Each word feels like contraband, each sentence a rebellion. Would you risk keeping it, hiding it under your bed, reading by candlelight, or would you throw it into the fire yourself, choosing silence over survival? Some books do not simply record the past, they seem to reach forward, stretching across centuries to glimpse what has not yet happened. They are the books that predict the future. Whether coincidence, foresight, or something more mysterious, their words feel prophetic, as though ink itself carried a spark of destiny. Take the case of Nostradamus. His Les Prophéties, published in 1555, has been both celebrated and ridiculed for centuries. Written in cryptic quatrains, his verses are vague enough to invite endless interpretations. Yet readers have found eerie echoes of events long after his time: the rise of Napoleon, the Great Fire of London, even the horrors of World War E. Were these genuine visions, or clever riddles that can be retrofitted to any disaster? Skeptics argue the latter, but believers cling to the haunting possibility that he glimpsed the centuries to come. Then there is Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels, written in 1726 as satire. In one section, Swift describes two tiny moons orbiting Mars, 151 years before astronomers actually discovered Phobos and Deimos. How could a satirist imagine so precisely what would later prove true? A lucky guess, perhaps. Or did Swift have access to knowledge hidden in manuscripts, lost to history? In 1898, Morgan Robertson wrote a novella called Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. It tells the story of a massive luxury ship deemed unsinkable, which strikes an iceberg and sinks in the North Atlantic. 14 years later, the Titanic met its fate under circumstances chillingly similar. The Titan and the Titanic, nearly the same name, the same arrogance, the same catastrophe. Was it mere coincidence, or a writer tapping into some strange current of fate? Other works go even further. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein hinted at organ transplants and artificial life, a century before science began to make them real. H.G. Wells imagined atomic bombs in 1914, decades before Hiroshima. Jules Verne wrote of submarines, space travel, and moon landings long before technology existed. These writers were dreamers, yes, but dreamers who somehow wrote the blueprint of the future. But then, there are books so uncanny that they seem less like imagination and more like prophecy. Consider the Book of Revelation, written nearly 2,000 years ago. Its apocalyptic visions of plagues, wars, and fire from the sky have been read by countless generations as forecasts of their own times. Whether divine inspiration or human projection, the text continues to haunt us with its promise of an end yet to come. Now imagine you discover a manuscript that seems to describe the future in detail, our future. It names leaders not yet born, technologies not yet invented, disasters not yet unfolded. Do you read ahead, hungry to know what comes next, or do you shut it, fearing that to know the future is to lose the present? Here's a thought experiment. What if the future is not fixed, but influenced by reading it? If you read a prophecy of doom, do you act to prevent it, thus proving the prophecy wrong? Or does your very knowledge push events toward fulfilling it? Books that predict the future may not just reveal destiny, they may shape it. And then there is the humorous side. Imagine a medieval monk writing a prophecy that someday, men shall carry glowing slabs in their hands and speak across oceans with no wires. If he meant smartphones, he would sound mad to his peers. Yet to us, he would sound uncannily accurate. Perhaps many old prophecies we dismiss as nonsense will one day look obvious. Maybe one day, people will laugh at our disbelief and say, they had the book all along, but they could not see it. The books that predict the future remind us of two truths. First, imagination is often a preview of what becomes real. Second, mystery lies in whether that preview is coincidence or cosmic design. Perhaps some authors tapped into intuition, dreams, or hidden knowledge that guided their pens. Or perhaps time itself is not as linear as we think, and echoes of tomorrow sometimes find their way onto the page. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy, imagine holding a book that whispers of your own future. Maybe it tells you of a love yet to be found, a journey yet to be taken, or a trial yet to be faced. Would you keep turning the pages, desperate to know, or would you close the book, choosing to let life surprise you, one unwritten page at a time? Among the most feared and fascinating of hidden manuscripts are those said to open doors not to knowledge, but to other realms. Books that claim to summon spirits, to conjure demons, to call angels from the heavens or shadows from the abyss. For centuries they were whispered about, condemned by churches, hunted by kings, yet always sought by those desperate for power beyond the human. One of the most infamous is the Ars Goetia, part of a larger text known as the Lesser Key of Solomon. It lists 72 demons, each with their own powers, personalities, and symbols. The text describes how to draw magic circles, chant incantations, and bind spirits to one's will. Imagine a medieval scholar, hunched over candlelight, carefully sketching sigils, whispering names that echo with fire and shadow. Did he truly believe the spirits would appear? Or did the ritual itself provide a sense of mastery in a world of chaos? Another notorious work is the Picatrix, a massive grimoire of astrology and magic translated into Latin in the 12th century. It blends ancient Arabic, Greek, and Persian traditions, describing talismans, planetary invocations, and formulas to call upon cosmic powers. To read it was to risk being branded a heretic, yet its influence stretched into Renaissance courts, where kings and scholars alike dabbled in its forbidden wisdom. And then, there is the legendary Book of Abramelin. According to lore, it teaches the reader how to contact a guardian angel, but only after enduring months of purification, prayer, and ritual. Once achieved, the angel supposedly grants knowledge of hidden treasures and control over demons. The idea is both comforting and terrifying, that holiness itself could be a weapon, and that summoning spirits was not always about darkness, but sometimes about light. But perhaps the most famous of all spirit books is not real at all, the Necronomicon. First imagined by writer H.P. Lovecraft in the early 20th century, it was described as an ancient tome of dark incantations, written by the mad Arab Abdul Alhazred. Though fictional, the Necronomicon became so convincing that readers searched libraries for it, and forged versions began to circulate. Some even claimed to have seen it, tucked away in dusty archives. The line between fiction and reality blurred, proving that sometimes the idea of a forbidden book is as powerful as the book itself. Now imagine you find such a book in your attic. Its cover is cracked, its pages filled with strange diagrams, circles, stars, names you do not recognize. The air feels heavier as you open it. Do you dare to read aloud, or do you slam it shut, heart racing, wondering if some doors are better left unopened? Skeptics say these books are mere superstition, psychological games that trick the mind. And yet, there are countless stories of people who tried. Tales of candles that blew out on their own, of whispers in the dark, of shadows that lingered too long. Were they victims of imagination, or did they really call something that should have been left in silence? And here's the curious thought. Maybe the real power of these books lies not in spirits but in us. To believe is to transform fear into reality. A reader who thinks a demon stands behind them may act as if it is true, shaping their choices, their sanity, even their fate. In that sense, the summoning works because the words summon a different spirit, the one inside ourselves. The books that claim to summon spirits remind us of the fine line between knowledge and danger, curiosity and peril. They invite us to ask, how far would you go for power, for answers, for contact with the unknown? Would you risk your soul for a glimpse beyond the veil? So tonight, as you drift toward dreams, imagine holding such a book. The ink shimmers faintly under your lamp. A page lies open, its spell incomplete, waiting for a voice. Yours. Would you whisper the words, risking that something stirs in the darkness, or would you close it, smiling nervously, and let the mystery remain sealed? Some books are lost not because of fire or censorship, but because their authors vanished, and their works vanished with them. These are the ghost libraries of history, The stories half-written, the treatises whispered about but never found. To imagine them is to imagine what humanity might have known, had fate allowed those authors to finish their final pages. One of the greatest mysteries is the lost works of Aristotle. The philosopher we know today left behind writings on logic, ethics, and metaphysics. Yet ancient records suggest he wrote far more: dialogues, plays, and treatises on subjects from politics to philosophy of science. After his death, much of his library disappeared, passed secretly from hand to hand, buried in cellars, rediscovered centuries later in fragments. What brilliance was lost forever when those pages vanished into the dust? Consider also Hypatia of Alexandria, the famed mathematician and philosopher of the 4th century. She was murdered by a mob, her works destroyed. None of her writings survive, though her students spoke of them. Imagine if her treatises on astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy had endured. Perhaps her perspective, as one of history's most brilliant women, might have altered the trajectory of science itself. Another haunting story is that of Giordano Bruno, the Italian thinker who dared to suggest that stars were suns with their own planets. His writings on infinity, cosmology, and philosophy challenged the Church so deeply that he was burned at the stake in 1600. Some of his manuscripts perished with him. What ideas about the universe were silenced that day? How different might astronomy look if we had the full record of his daring vision? Then there is the mystery of Ambrose Bierce, the American writer and satirist. In 1913, he vanished in Mexico during the Revolution. No body was found, no grave, no final words. He had spoken of traveling south to witness war, perhaps to die. Did he take with him unfinished manuscripts, stories that would have sharpened his dark wit even further? His disappearance leaves us with silence where there might have been more biting truth. And what of the poets, the dreamers who wrote but never published? The ancient world is full of mentions of works that no longer exist. Entire epics, plays, and philosophical works are referenced by later authors, but the originals are gone, as if their creators carried them into the grave, leaving us with only rumors of what once was. Imagine this: you meet an old scholar who shows you a box of handwritten notes. He says they belong to a friend, a genius, who disappeared years ago. The notes end abruptly, mid-sentence, as if the writer set down the pen and never returned. Would you read them, piecing together the unfinished thought, or would you close the box, haunted by the feeling that some words are never meant to be completed? There is a peculiar melancholy in these vanished books. They remind us that knowledge is not only destroyed by enemies, but sometimes lost to time itself. Death, disappearance, or neglect can erase a voice as surely as fire. And yet, in that absence, the imagination fills the gaps. We dream of what Hypatia might have taught, what Aristotle might have written, what Bruno might have revealed. Perhaps the real legacy of these lost authors is the questions they leave behind. Their silence is a mirror, reflecting our hunger for the words we will never read. So tonight, as you prepare for sleep, picture yourself in a quiet study. Before you sits a manuscript, the handwriting fading, the final page unfinished. The pen lies across it, as though the writer intended to return but never did. Would you complete the sentence yourself, or would you let it remain forever unfinished, a fragment like the lost voices of history? When we think of science, we often imagine progress, discovery, the steady march of knowledge. But history shows us another side. Times when science itself suppressed books, silenced voices, and locked away manuscripts deemed too radical, too threatening, or simply too far ahead of their time. Tonight, we open the cabinet of forbidden science. Consider Galileo Galilei. His dialogue concerning the two chief world systems argued that the Earth revolved around the Sun, not the other way around. To us, this seems obvious. But in 1633, it was heresy. The book was banned, Galileo forced to recant, and copies hidden or destroyed. For centuries, the Church tried to silence heliocentrism, fearing it would undermine not only theology, but the very order of society. Yet Galileo's words survived, and the Earth continued to orbit the Sun, whether acknowledged or not. Then there was Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species, published in 1859. It introduced the theory of evolution through natural selection, a theory so disruptive that some countries and schools banned it outright. Critics called it dangerous, godless, immoral. Some still do today. But for many, Darwin's book was less an attack on faith than an invitation to see life as a grand, unfolding story written in the language of adaptation. And like all suppressed books, its controversy only amplified its reach. But suppression did not always come from religion. Sometimes it came from science itself. Take Ignaz Semmelweis, a Hungarian physician in the 1840s. He published findings that doctors who washed their hands dramatically reduced deaths in maternity wards. Instead of celebrating him, the medical establishment ridiculed him, rejecting his book and reputation. He died in obscurity, his work dismissed, until decades later, when germ theory proved him right. The irony: a book that could have saved countless lives was ignored because it offended the pride of his peers. There are other examples, too. Alfred Wegener's early 20th century theory of continental drift, describing continents moving across the Earth, was mocked by geologists for decades. His writings were dismissed, his evidence ignored. Only in the 1960s, with plate tectonics, did science admit he was right. By then, Wegener was long gone, his vindication too late for him to witness. And let us not forget the controversial fringes. Books claiming knowledge of free energy, ancient advanced technology, or suppressed medical cures often circulate in the margins of science. Some may indeed be fantasy, but others raise unsettling questions. Who decides which books are nonsense and which are genius ahead of time? History teaches us that sometimes the line between crackpot and pioneer is drawn not by truth, but by politics, power, and timing. Now imagine yourself as an inventor in the past. You have discovered a principle that challenges everything the world believes. You write it down, publish it, and expect applause. Instead, your book is mocked, banned, or ignored. Do you fight for recognition or hide your notes, fearing they will only bring ruin? Suppressed scientific books remind us of a sobering truth. Knowledge does not always advance in a straight line. Sometimes it stumbles, falls, or even retreats. Ideas too bold for their time are buried, waiting for another age to resurrect them. And when they do, we marvel at the foresight that was once treated as madness. Here's a playful thought. What if some of today's most ridiculed books about consciousness, alien life, or hidden dimensions are actually the seeds of tomorrow's science? One day, children may study them as foundational texts, while shaking their heads at how blind we once were. So tonight, as you rest, imagine opening a dusty volume stamped "Rejected." Its margins are filled with desperate notes, equations scribbled by a forgotten hand. The cover whispers of ideas too wild for its time. Would you dismiss it as others once did? Or would you keep reading, daring to believe that the future sometimes hides in the very books science tried hardest to silence? Religion has always been bound to books. Scriptures inspire faith, guide morality, and shape civilizations. But alongside the sacred texts we know, there are others, hidden, banned, declared too dangerous to read. These are the forbidden books of religion, works that could have changed the shape of belief if they had not been silenced. Consider the Gnostic Gospels, texts that painted a very different picture of Jesus. The Gospel of Thomas presents him not as a savior through sacrifice, but as a teacher of secret wisdom, urging followers to discover divine light within themselves. The Gospel of Mary gives Mary Magdalene a central role, perhaps as equal or superior to the apostles. To early church leaders, these ideas were too destabilizing. If salvation came not through the church but through personal enlightenment, their authority would crumble. And so these texts were branded heresy, burned, buried, erased. Other religions faced similar patterns. In Judaism, certain mystical texts were hidden away, accessible only to a select few. The Book of Enoch, for instance, describes angels descending to earth, teaching humanity forbidden arts and fathering giants. For centuries, it was excluded from the Hebrew Bible, surviving only in Ethiopian Christian tradition. Why? Perhaps because its cosmic battles and fallen angels raised more questions than the rabbis were willing to answer. In Islam, too, stories circulate of writings suppressed for fear of leading believers astray. While the Quran is seen as complete and final, some traditions hint at apocryphal surahs, or alternate versions preserved only in whispers. Whether fact or legend, the very idea reflects a truth. that no religion is free from the tension between open knowledge and guarded mystery. Even within Christianity itself, censorship shaped the canon. The Council of Nicaea in 325 CE is often remembered as the moment leaders selected which Gospels were in and which were out. The Bible we know is not the sum of all writings, but the result of decisions, political as well as spiritual. Imagine if the Gospel of Mary or the Book of Judas had been included. Would Christianity today emphasize inner wisdom over obedience, mystery over certainty? Beyond scriptures, countless theological works were banned by religious authorities over the centuries. Thinkers who dared to speculate on the nature of God, the fate of the soul, or the possibility of reincarnation often saw their writings suppressed. Origen of Alexandria, one of Christianity's earliest theologians, speculated about universal salvation, that even the damned might one day be redeemed. His ideas were later condemned, his books hidden or destroyed. What if his vision had survived? Would Christianity have developed a more compassionate theology? Now imagine you are a believer in the Middle Ages. A friend slips you a fragile manuscript, warning you to hide it well. You open it and read words that suggest God dwells not in temples but within you, that salvation is not controlled by priests but found in your own heart. Would you feel liberated or terrified? Would you share it, risking death, or burn it yourself to save your soul? Here lies the paradox. Forbidden religious books are dangerous precisely because they offer alternative paths to the divine. They threaten hierarchy, dogma, and the structures that bind communities together. Yet they also reveal the boundless hunger of humanity to know more, to imagine more, to reach for truths beyond the official version. And here's a playful twist. Perhaps the greatest forbidden book is not hidden in a cave or locked in a vault, but lies already in your imagination. The questions you dare not ask, the doubts you whisper in the dark. Every religion fears those private books too, because once written in the heart, they can never be burned. So tonight, as you close your eyes, picture a library of forbidden scriptures. Scrolls wrapped in cloth, codices buried in sand, pages smudged with age. Would you unroll them, daring to read, or would you let them lie, leaving faith as it is, untouched by dangerous questions? When civilizations vanish, they do not simply leave behind ruins of stone, they leave behind silences where their words once were. Lost cities mean lost libraries, lost codices, lost books that might have told us who they were, what they believed, and how they lived. Tonight, let us walk through the ghost libraries of lost civilizations. Take the Maya, for instance. They created elaborate codices written on bark paper, filled with hieroglyphs and brilliant illustrations. These books recorded astronomy, rituals, histories, and prophecies. But when the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they burned almost all of them. Of hundreds, only 4 survived: the Dresden, Madrid, Paris, and Grolier codices. Imagine what was lost in the flames. Calendars that tracked stars with uncanny precision, records of kings and wars, and knowledge of medicines still unknown to us. Each page consumed was a chapter of humanity erased. The Egyptians left behind hieroglyphs carved in stone but also wrote on papyrus scrolls, many of which have vanished. Legends speak of the Library of Alexandria, a repository of countless texts from Egypt, Greece, India, and beyond. Whether destroyed in one great fire or slowly through neglect and conquest, its disappearance is one of history's greatest tragedies. What secrets of medicine, mathematics, or philosophy might have been lost forever when its shelves turned to ash? The Indus Valley civilization, flourishing around 2000 BCE, left behind a script still undeciphered. Tiny seals and symbols cover artifacts, but without the key, they remain mute. Were they recording trade, prayers, or stories, a lost book may sit in front of us, carved in stone, yet we cannot read it. It is as if an entire civilization is speaking, but in a language we no longer hear. And then there are the myths of Atlantis, the fabled civilization said to have sunk beneath the sea. No evidence has ever been found, but stories persist of a people with advanced knowledge, wiped away in a single cataclysm. Could it be mere allegory, Plato's cautionary tale, or was there truly a civilization whose books are now scattered across the ocean floor, unread and unreachable? Closer to our own time, consider the Mesoamerican city of Teotihuacan. Its massive pyramids still rise in silence, but no written records of its people survive. Who built this city? What gods did they worship? Without their books, the answers slip further into myth. Imagine for a moment stumbling upon such a library, buried under centuries of sand. You brush off the dust and find pages bound in unfamiliar symbols. As you read, you realize it is a voice from a people long gone, whispering their fears, their hopes, their knowledge. How would it feel to hear a civilization speak again after thousands of years of silence? There is a peculiar ache in these lost books. They remind us that human knowledge is fragile, and that what we know today is only a fraction of what has been. Each vanished text is not only a missing page of history, it is a missing mirror, a chance to see ourselves through the eyes of others. And here is the mystery. Perhaps some of these books still exist, buried deep, waiting. Archaeologists still find fragments of scrolls, tablets, codices hidden in caves or sealed jars. The next discovery might unlock an entire, forgotten world. So as you drift into dreams tonight, picture yourself walking through ruins, a torch in hand. You stumble upon a sealed chamber, and inside, shelves of books untouched for millennia. Would you dare to open one, knowing it might change everything we thought we knew about humanity? Or would you leave them closed, respecting the silence of the lost? Some books are not lost by accident or burned by enemies. They are hidden deliberately, locked away by secret societies that guard them like treasure. These are the books said to contain forbidden knowledge, truths too disruptive for ordinary people, or secrets that grant power to those who keep them. Tonight, we step into the shadowed halls of societies sworn to silence. Consider the Freemasons, one of the most famous secret fraternities. Their rituals, symbols, and codes are said to trace back to ancient builders and mystery traditions. Rumors abound that the Masons hold texts linking them to the secrets of Solomon's temple, alchemy, or even the design of modern governments. Whether myth or reality, their reputation feeds the idea that somewhere, deep in Masonic archives, lie books that could rewrite history. Then there is the Rosicrucian order, which emerged in the early 17th century with manifestos that promised hidden wisdom. They spoke of a secret brotherhood of enlightened thinkers who guarded knowledge of medicine, alchemy, and the cosmos. Some believe they possessed texts from ancient Egypt or Arabia, books passed down through centuries to be revealed only to the worthy. To this day, Rosicrucians are associated with mysterious libraries that outsiders can only dream of. The Illuminati, another infamous name, has become almost synonymous with conspiracy. Founded in Bavaria in 1776, this society aimed to challenge religious and political oppression. Critics claimed they sought world domination, guided by hidden texts that outlined their philosophy and strategy. Though the Illuminati was outlawed within a decade, legends persist of their secret manuscripts, preserved and passed through generations, waiting to resurface when the world is ready. Religious orders also concealed texts. The Vatican Library holds one of the largest archives of restricted works in the world. Locked behind its walls are manuscripts spanning centuries, apocryphal Gospels, banned heresies, letters between rulers and popes. Some speculate that documents within could challenge official church history, revealing truths about early Christianity, ancient rituals, or even contact with other civilizations. Few have ever seen these pages, but their secrecy fuels endless speculation. Other societies, like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn in the 19th century, were dedicated to magic and mysticism. Their members studied grimoires, mystical diagrams, and instructions for spiritual ascent. Some of these books were printed, but others were handwritten manuscripts, copied and shared only within the order. To hold one was to hold a key to initiation, a step deeper into mystery. Now imagine being invited into such a society. A hooded figure leads you into a candlelit chamber. On a pedestal rests a book bound in leather, locked with a clasp. The figure whispers that within its pages lies the wisdom of ages, but once you open it, your life will never be the same. Would you turn the key, or would you walk away, fearing the burden of knowledge too great for one mind to bear? Books hidden by secret societies remind us that knowledge is power, and power is rarely shared freely. Sometimes secrecy protects ideas from corruption. Other times it hoards them, keeping humanity in ignorance. And so we wonder, are these books truly hidden for our protection or for someone else's advantage? And here's the unsettling thought. Maybe the most dangerous knowledge is not written in any library, but in the unwritten rules these societies pass orally, generation after generation. A book can be stolen, burned, or copied, but secrets carried in minds and whispered in oaths may never reach the outside world at all. So as you drift into dreams, picture yourself walking through a grand, hidden archive. Shelves stretch beyond sight, filled with books stamped with strange sigils. You reach for one, and your hand trembles. Would you open it, knowing the knowledge inside was never meant for you? Or would you leave it in the shadows, letting the secrets of the societies remain sealed? Most books whisper quietly from shelves, speaking only to those who choose to open them. But some roar like thunder, reshaping entire civilizations, toppling empires, and igniting revolutions. These are the books that changed empires, words so powerful they altered the fate of nations. One of the most famous examples is the Communist Manifesto, written by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels in 1848. Slim, concise, and direct, it declared that workers of the world must unite. Within decades, its words inspired revolutions from Russia to China, reshaping global politics for over a century. A thin pamphlet, printed cheaply, became the spark that burned empires and birthed new ones. Centuries earlier, another book shook an empire, Martin Luther's German translation of the Bible. By rendering scripture into the language of ordinary people, he undermined the Catholic Church's monopoly on spiritual authority. Suddenly, a farmer could read the Word of God without a priest. The Protestant Reformation was born, and with it, wars of religion that tore Europe apart. A single translation shattered Christendom's unity. In ancient times, consider the Analects of Confucius. Compiled by his disciples, it became the moral foundation of Chinese empires for over 2,000 years. Dynasties rose and fell, but officials were tested on Confucian classics, their values embedded in law and governance. Few books have shaped the machinery of empire as deeply and as lastingly as Confucius's teachings. Another text that transformed empires is The Prince by Niccolò Machiavelli. Written in the 16th century, it offered blunt advice to rulers. It is better to be feared than loved. Appearances matter more than virtue, and power must be maintained at all costs. To some, it was scandalous. To others, essential reading. Its shadow stretches across politics even today, where leaders still quote or secretly follow Machiavelli's ruthless pragmatism. Religious texts, too, changed empires. The Quran united tribes of Arabia into a powerful caliphate that spread across continents. The Bhagavad Gita inspired rulers in India for centuries. The Torah shaped kingdoms and cultures that endure to this day. Sacred books are more than words on parchment. They are blueprints for civilizations. Sometimes even banned books gained influence. Voltaire's sharp critiques of monarchy and religion circulated in secret before the French Revolution. Thomas Paine's Common Sense fanned the flames of American independence, persuading colonists that breaking from Britain was not only possible but necessary. With simple prose, Paine dismantled an empire's grip. Now imagine the weight of such a book in your hands. You open it, and the words do not merely inform you, they demand action. They whisper rebellion, justice, faith, or empire. They call not just to your mind, but to your courage. Would you follow? Would you let ink guide your destiny? The books that changed empires remind us of a truth both inspiring and terrifying. Ideas are more powerful than armies. A book can outlast a dynasty, topple a throne, inspire millions to march, or bind nations together for centuries. And unlike armies, books do not die. They wait quietly until a reader is ready to awaken them. So tonight, as you lie in bed, imagine turning the page of a book that will change everything. Perhaps it calls for revolution or peace, or a new way of seeing the world. Would you answer its call, or would you close it, leaving history unchanged? We have wandered through shadows and fire, through ruined libraries and secret archives, through legends of forbidden texts and prophecies of books that may never have existed. And now, as our journey comes to its final chapter, we are left with a question: what do hidden books truly teach us? First, they remind us of the fragility of knowledge. Every burned codex, every lost scroll, every manuscript buried in sand is a reminder that human understanding is not permanent. What we know today rests on the survival of fragile paper, ink, and memory. One spark, one flood, one act of censorship, and an entire worldview can vanish. Yet the very fact that some fragments survive against all odds gives us hope. Knowledge is fragile, but it is also resilient. Second, hidden books reveal the power of curiosity. If there is one constant in every story, from Alexandria to the Vatican vaults, from Maya codices to secret societies, it is that people will always seek what is forbidden. Curiosity is perhaps humanity's most dangerous and most divine trait. We cannot stop asking questions. We cannot stop opening doors, even when warned not to. Third, they teach us that ideas are more dangerous than swords. An empire can burn a book, but the idea escapes in whispers, in memory, in rumor. A banned gospel resurfaces centuries later. A suppressed scientific theory eventually triumphs. A destroyed library becomes a legend that inspires generations to search again. Hidden books prove that words outlive those who fear them. But perhaps the deepest lesson is this: hidden books are mirrors. When we imagine what they might contain, we reveal what we ourselves desire: truth, freedom, immortality, power, or simply understanding. A forbidden gospel whispers of equality. A burned treatise suggests rebellion. A vanished manuscript reminds us of the silence of those unheard. In longing for these books, we are really longing for ourselves, for a version of humanity more courageous, more curious, more complete. Now let us return to you. After all these stories, imagine you are holding the final book. Its cover is plain, its pages blank. Slowly, words begin to appear, written not in ink, but in your own thoughts. This is your book. What will it say? Will it tell of your fears, your hopes, your search for meaning, or will you leave it blank, content to let the mystery remain? Perhaps the true secret books were never hidden in vaults or burned in fires, but live in each of us. Every question you whisper in the night, every doubt you dare not speak, every dream of a better world is itself a secret text waiting to be read. And no authority, no empire, no fire can erase that. So tonight, as this story ends and silence begins, ask yourself, what will your hidden book say, and more importantly, who will you let read it? Before you drift into sleep, I want to thank you for staying with me on this long journey through mystery, history, and imagination. Your presence has been the light guiding these pages. If you enjoyed this exploration, please take a moment to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. And one last invitation: tell me in the comments, which hidden book would you most want to find if you could, or is there a story you would like me to explore next time? Your voice helps shape where we go from here. Until then, may your dreams be full of wonder, and may your secret book remain safe, waiting for you to write the next chapter.